right? I don't think you could get all of them out of there, but a good amount of them
Hmm.
you could actually get, and that just came down to grinding pages and stuff like that.
And to unlock the Hongmen levels, all you have to do is just level up to 50 now.
Yeah, and then we're free.
Yeah, no need to get an item and unlock stuff.
Mm.
Um, oh, and there's also special faction outfits. You can create them right now, but they're super expensive. They require 500 fabrics. For now, we only can get fabrics through the cash shop.
Mm.
So,
Mm.
yeah, that's
Yes.
unobtainable right now unless you're willing to spend thousands and thousands of dollars.
I'm sure there's somebody out there somewhere in the world. I know there's somebody out there that is like, I'm gonna spend tens of thousands of dollars on this game and be the richest man in North American Blade and Soul, or European, I suppose.
Hmm.
Um, but that's crafting. It's a very, very big area of the game, one that I have always been intimidated by, so I've always looked away from it. Um, so I think it's been a very useful segment for me. I've learned a lot, and hopefully you guys have too. If you have any questions in the chat, you can go ahead and ask that. And as we continue with the podcast, I'll look at a few of the questions and find some that I think are interesting to answer, and then we can answer them at the end of the podcast. But I think that could close out our PvE section of the podcast for now. I
Hmm.
think we've talked a good bit about it. Continue to enjoy the game, do Poharan, and we'll hope for BSH to come out soon. I have to say that the dungeons and the boss fights are really fun to do. I think Poharan is a really kind of like a very amusing dungeon to play. But there's much more to come in the future. BSH will be interesting. Mushin will be very exciting for you guys, I'm sure. And Spiral will be very fun. Just remember that in Blade and Soul, I think especially for something like Mushin, dying is expected. You know, you're not expected to be able to clear Mushin on your first try or even on your second or your third.
it took
It
me
takes a long time.
it took me like several like hours and hours of trying on the
Hours of trying.
seventh, eighth floors.
Yes. And you have to really think about your class creatively. So please look forward to that. I think that this game is very, very exciting when it comes to like their boss fights. And also, I think from 45 to 50, the game actually improved a lot. So if you like what you're getting right now at 45 with Pohoran, and eventually you can make a decision with BSH and whatnot, in my personal experience, expect something even greater at level 50 because the game really comes into its own. So, any last thoughts on the PvE for what we have so far, Daka?
Not much.
All right. All right.
Okay, we
Well,
can move on.
PvE is not the only part of the game of Blade and Soul. There's a big part that is PvP too, so why don't we talk about PvP for a while? Woohoo! This is my favorite part. I love PvP, but I'm terrible at it, Daka. But something important to note is that from closed beta to official release, there have actually been some changes to the PvP. What's changed? What is different?
Okay, so one thing that did change was evade and block.
Mm. And this was something that was very widely actually complained about.
So your base evade and block is now set to 0. So no random evade blocks unless you gain evade and block from skills, buffs, or stance. So
Mm.
no assassin will not have 0 evasion when they're in stealth. They'll still have their
Yes.
50%.
Which a certain somebody that we know to be Rat Eyes has very strong opinions about. And I'm sure a lot of other people too. A lot of people were talking about how assassins were very hard to deal with because even if you tried to swing at them in stealth, they would often evade. And I think on Kriya you're able to consistently hit them. Is that even true?
That's
Or do they still?
because, well, one KFMs have their unblockable
Yes.
defense piercing Z that
Mm.
pulls them out of stealth. So The one thing you should know about defense peers is that not only they go through like block or counters, but they cannot be evaded or blocked at all. Like, yeah.
Yes. That and this is just talking about the passive. You can still use like your Q or E or SS or like invul barriers, like your blade barrier to block it. But it's just like the RNG evasion doesn't work. Using your number one block, for example, won't work. So there is a differentiation there. Um, so they've removed all those RNG stats, right? But I have many nightmares, Daka, when I go to sleep. When I went to sleep during closed beta of when I was mashing my keyboard and I got put into a stun and I tabbed out, and then this blade dancer just came up to me and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna hit you with my lightning draw now, and then I'm gonna stun you, and then you blinked and you're dead. Why, Daka? Why does that happen to me?"
Okay, so do not mash tab. Okay, so in this game, you have to use your tab very wisely if you want to be high in PvP. So usually there are two ways to use tab. One is to like let them all, play mind games with them, let them use waste their cooldowns, and then tab out so that they won't be able to stun lock you again after you tabbed out. The other way is to use it offensively. So if you spec into it, like your tab escape has a daze attached to it.
Mm, mm,
Assassin's by default has the flashbang,
yes.
which is like a mini stun.
Yes. It can actually be considered better in some ways occasionally because there's no option you have to get out of it. Even though it's very short lasting, there's no action that you can take during that time. So different classes will have different escapes available to them. A lot of them, as Daka said, will have the daze attached. The assassins have the flash bomb. And as far as I can recall, the only two classes that don't really have a counterattack associated to it is the summoner and the warlock.
Sort of. Warlock puts a debuff on you that disables your charge skills.
So it's hard for you to continue your pursuit.
Uh-huh.
So utilizing your escapes is something that Daka and I really, really wanted to talk about in PvP. Because a lot of new players I've gathered from reading Reddit and watching streams and, looking at people's reactions is that a lot of people are like, well, if you don't tab their stun combo, you can die. And so I have to tab the instant I get stunned, and then it just becomes a game of when they catch me again, and the instant that happens, I'm just dead. So this game is very dry. It's very formulaic, right? That's what they tell me. But actually, there's a very deep and intricate mind game that you can play with it, and that can only happen once you're willing to utilize your health as a resource, right, Daka? So the idea of holding your tab, even though you know that there's potential for the enemy to kill you, you want to make sure that they respect the fact that you can be counterattacked, right? So you were mentioning about utilizing this daze offensively. Let's talk about that a little bit more.
Okay, so when you have your tab, your opponent, if they know what you're doing, will be very reluctant to like stay near you and keep attacking you. So you can play mind games with them, because if you tap them and then you daze them, they have only two options: use their own tab or back roll out of it. So, and back rolling, this is another mechanic that people need to learn. It's very like right at the end of the roll, you can be CC'd again.
Yes, there is a point in time where you are not invulnerable anymore. So you're actually available to be attacked, and during this time, you actually cannot take any actions yourself. So even if you're mashing your own backdash, or mashing your QE strafe, or mashing your invul button, there is a point in time when you backroll where you actually will get hit if your opponent times their skills correctly. But it's a very small window. It's a very, very small window indeed.
Yes.
And so when you utilize your tab escape and you daze your opponent, you see them backroll, Daka, what do?
I just follow up with another CC.
And then they have to think, well, now my back roll is on cooldown. I only have my own tab escape left. And so it becomes a question of, do I want to tab out of it? Right? And say we continue with the situation, Daka. You CC'd your opponent, and he doesn't have his back roll anymore, and he's mashing his keyboard, and he's like, oh my god, I got caught, and he tabs out of his escape. What do you do in that situation?
So, one thing special about tabs is that they have a invul frame for about 0.5 seconds after they use it. So
So
during
they
the
can't be using
animation,
it.
they are invulnerable, and after that, for 0.5 seconds, they are also invulnerable. So that allows them to set up their next move.
Hmm.
But you should also note that frame ends right when you use your next skill. So what
Yes.
I would do is, first of all, I would try not to get hit by the daze.
Hmm. Hmm. So a lot of the times when you watch high level PvP, you'll see a lot of people put somebody in a stun or put somebody in a daze, and you'll see them side dodge, like use their QE or backdash away. And some people are wondering like, oh well, he's in CC, he's not going to attack you. Why are you doing that? And the reason is exactly for why Daka described is because you can actually dodge out the reversal tab, the reversal daze that comes from when they use their tab escape. And that's very useful because essentially you've set the game up such that you've caused the guy to use his escape and prevented any follow-up aggressive options that he can do off of using that tab.
And I should also mention that those tab escapes have a 3-meter range, so you can quickly stun them and then move out of range to 4 meters and then like see what your opponent does. And then if they do nothing, you can just follow up with another skill. But here's the
Yes.
thing. It could be their plan to make you use your skill and then like waste your CC and then use their tab. So it's a real mind game there.
Yes, there are a lot of possibilities, and the strategy that you have set up for using your tab escape can dictate how the game ends up going. It's a very important part of the game, and depending on if your strategy pays off against your opponent, and if your opponent makes the correct read, the game could be turned around, right? You could end up making a comeback in that sense. And so it's a much deeper metagame idea. Well, I don't know if metagame is the right word to use, but it's a much deeper mind game and interaction between the two players than just saying, oh, I got CC'd, I should tab out of this because I don't want to be in CC. Um, so why don't we talk about when we're utilizing the tab escape, um, some good ideas to use it aggressively. The difference between having to tab escape passively, I suppose, which a lot of new players do, and when you fight against a pro player, how he uses his tab both defensively and also gaining an aggressive benefit with it.
Okay, so let's talk about ways to use it offensively. So, if your opponent used his tab first, or say he's doing his massive combos on you, you have a chance to reverse the position with your tab, and then like use your own combos on him after the days. So there's that.
And most of the time, doing this is a very surefire way to take the game and win it. Because once you catch them without their own tab escape down, and you have your cooldowns up, you can actually put them into a very, very long CC chain. So one of the things that's very important to note is that if your opponent is in this situation where he knows that if he gets caught by the tab days, he can end up dying, when he puts you into CC, it's as Daka mentioned, he's not going to be standing there right next to you doing damage, right? He's going to want to be playing carefully. Because if he takes that gamble and stays next to you and tries to do his animation canceling and do his offensive abilities rather than using his dodges and using his invul, and you tab out, he's lost the game. So in some senses, you actually gain more defensively by just holding your tab. If you just said, okay, you know what, I know I could kill you if I tab out, and you put me in CC, I'm actually just not going to use it. I'm going to watch you use every single one of your dodges. I'm going to watch you back away and not do a single point of damage to me, and then I'm just going to get out of the CC for free, right? So this is a very, very strong way to hold your tab and always use your tab in a very active way, right? So by not using it for this current situation, you save it for a later situation. And eventually, if you wait for long enough and they use all their dodges, the next time they CC you, you know that they have no way to escape your tab, and then that's when you take your sure win, which is a very strong way to use it.
But sometimes that may not always be the case. For example, when they're like doing huge bursts to you, then you have to like escape. But do so, like, if possible, do it like when they use their big cooldowns.
You have to analyze when the class is using, for example, a very easy one, Daka. When the destroyer becomes angry and red, what do if he has you in a CC chain?
You escape and then try to knock him down, because that's the only CC he's vulnerable to.
Yes. And that's a good rule of thumb against destroyers in general, is try to put them on their back, because otherwise they will be steamrolling at you, very angry and very mad, and you will not like it when they start swinging their axe at you. Similarly, for a Blade Dancer, one of the easiest things to look for is when they use their lightning draw, right? And they go into draw stance. That is another good reason to tab away from CC. What are some classes that might be a little more ambiguous, do you think, for players to analyze?
So KFM stun locks. So normally you would try to want to make them use their tremor, because that has a 45-second cooldown, and it's a 3-second stun as well. So that's one of the major skills that's in KFM's stun lock rotation. So that's one thing to watch out for. The other one would be the searing palm pressure point.
Yes, when they put one hand behind their back and they start poking you with their other hand, and it has a very distinct sound too, so you know exactly when they use that. It can get very, very dangerous for you, and that's how they really set up some of their big long stun combos, with that searing palm attack, the pressure point. I think that covers a good amount of how tab is utilized. Why don't we, well, I guess, is there anything else you want to say about utilizing tab escape? There's a lot to it, and we've only just barely covered kind of like the surface of it.
Well, I should also mention there are other forms of escape, just other than tab.
Yes.
So not all classes have this, but say assassins, they can put down their flower and then break out of stuns or daze. Summoners can just use their cat to CC the guy. And destroyers also have their blue fortitude rage thing to break out CC as well.
Yes, so you have to understand the classes and analyze them well, and make sure you know where all their escapes come from.
Yes,
another one to mention is on grabs. Blade Masters, Blade Dancers, they have their Blade Call.
Right.
That can knock opponents away.
KFMs have their freeze.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you have to play around with that for each class.
Yes.
So the best way to improve in PvP is to understand what all classes can do, not just your class.
Yes. There's a lot of learning to be done. There's a lot of little intricate details about each class that you should figure out. But when you do, it becomes much more satisfactory to PvP and understand what's going on in the game. And I think you will find that you have a lot more success. And even in your losses, you begin to understand why you lost the way you did. So we're nearly running out of time, but I want to get through some questions before we have our closing thoughts. We're going to answer some questions, Daka, and then afterwards we're going to take a quick look at the North American Imperial Tournament brackets and then send our viewers off. So we have a few questions here from the chat. Rockin' Rollin' says, can you craft the specific zone keys or just drop on dailies? The zone keys, I'm assuming he means the brilliant keys. So why don't we talk about that for a little bit?
I don't think you can craft those. I may be wrong.
Yeah, I don't remember a specific situation where you could craft them. Now, that being said, usually those zone keys that you get normally are from like surveys or like events or quests that give them to you. But at level 50, there will be keys that you can craft that provide the same effect as those zone keys for certain weapon boxes. But that's at level 50 on the KR server that I know of.
In
You can
KR
use it.
server, you can use you can transmutate normal keys to create Hongmoon keys, which has the same effect as the area keys.
Yes, yes. So as far as we know, Rock and Rollin', there's no way to craft specific zone keys. I think they only drop from quests or if you get them from surveys or events or whatnot.
Or cash shop.
Or cash, right. Yes, yes, they drop from the cash shop, from the gods, the heavens, NCSoft themselves. Clarara says, if you get knocked down and do not use any defensive abilities and get knocked down again, do you have access to the same abilities again? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Your knockdowns, so with all your like, so for the backwards roll on the F key and your options on knockdown, they are all on their own individual cooldowns, right? So the instant you get put into another knockdown CC, those same options will become available. However, if you are knocked down and if you get dazed, then you will only have your F roll option available. If you're knocked down and you get stunned, when the knockdown runs out, you will only be able to use your tab escape. Right?
Actually, for NA, this was been fixed in Korea,
KR.
but for a short duration, right after you are knocked down, you still can't use your knockdown skills.
Yes, you can use them even when you're stunned.
Uh-huh.
And if I remember correctly, wasn't the calculation like the knockdown essentially overlaps with the stun? So while the knockdown, so for example, if you had knocked down somebody for 3 seconds and they stun you at 1 second into the knockdown, then you still have those 2 seconds to utilize your
I think
ground
so.
abilities.
Yeah.
I think that's how it works, right? But make sure you guys watch that very carefully because a lot of players will be very tricky and they know that that's the mechanic that happens. So say you're a KFM and you tremor somebody on the floor, they could just be waiting for you to tremor and then they use their counterattack while they're stunned and catch you off guard and get out of that CC chain. So you need to watch very carefully.
This was fixed in KR though, in the December patch, so watch out for
Yes.
that.
Yes, yes. I think it's very important to notice. Somebody told me that destroyers are the only class that doesn't apply. Is that true?
I don't think so.
I think it works for them too, right?
Yeah, it works for them.
But there you have it. The knockdown game is a very complex one and something that we'll have to talk about more in detail another time. But let's keep moving on with these questions. Lishmay says, does clearing a dungeon fast increase drop rate?
No.
No, no, not at all. So take your time, make sure you do the dungeon well, and the drop rate should be the same regardless. One Happy Kitten says, does anyone know what moves disable movement abilities like Infiltrate? There are a lot of moves that do that depending on the class and depending on the specs that you put in. Some moves may innately disable charge. I don't know if there are any that actually do, but definitely there are a lot of moves within your class that when you spec them a certain way, like when you put in points in your skill tree, they gain that ability.
So NA doesn't have this yet, but with the December patch, Korea got a new skill interface. And below the skill trees, it will show all the tags that are associated with that trait skill. And you can learn from that to see which is a charge disable, which one's a guard disable, all those different kinds of things. In fact, I have updated BnS tree to include those tags as well. So you can hop on over to BnS tree and then read all of the tags.
Yes, there are so many tags. Very many tags that provide good information about the skills. Last one, Clarara says, is it possible to catch the one get up? And I think by this, Clarara means the slow get up option that people have that is often on their one, where, for example, if they use the shurikens on the assassin to slow get up, there is a specific window, Daka, a very specific window that I somehow magically can never hit because I am slow like a turtle. But what happens if you hit that?
If you hit them, they get knocked down again for 1 second.
1 second only.
Yes.
And they can also press 1 and then hold 2 or 3, depending on their class, and immediately counter. So you need to be very, very careful about that. The instant you re-knock them down, like Clara mentioned in her first question, I don't know why I said her, why they mentioned in their first question, they still have all their options for knockdown. So you need to be very, very careful about what you do after you re-knock them down. And also remember that I mentioned that everything goes on its own individual cooldown. So if you're knocking down people multiple times in a row and you see that they use their slow get up option and you see that they use their counter option, oftentimes they're left completely naked on other knockdowns, and it is as good of a CC as something like maybe a daze or maybe a stun. Barring the fact that maybe you won't be able to use certain abilities that proc only on stun, like KFMs, I think you can't shin kick on knockdown targets, only daze and stun, something like that. But yes, just realize that the knockdown becomes essentially inescapable if you use all your cooldowns, like your reflex roll, your counter, and your slow get up. It's hard to do, but it happens.
So one of the things that's overlooked in PvP is the ground games.
Yes.
Even I need to practice on that.
They are very complicated, and just like the tab escape, there's a lot of mind games associated with them. So watch good players and see how they handle the ground game. Some of them come up with some very creative jukes and ideas to get out of situations or provide themselves further aggressive opportunities. All right, Daka. Whew, we've talked about a lot, man. Time passes so fast.
Yeah.
We don't want to stay here too long because at 5 p.m. PST we actually have the North American Imperial Tournament. So before that happens, let's go ahead and just quickly, let me pull up the thing. Oh my god, I'm so unprepared, Daka. Let me pull up the brackets and we can go ahead and look at them together, and I'll link it for you guys in the chat, and we can kind of talk about some initial thoughts about what might happen. Now, the storylines that we can tell beforehand is that there's one man who has been dominating the tournaments. He's won 3 Imperial Tournaments so far, and in my opinion, he's a very skilled player, at least within the context of the community right now. And the big storyline is, will he continue that streak, or is there somebody out there that can stop him? So there, the brackets are linked for you guys in the chat. You can take a look at what you can expect to see come 5 p.m. PST. And that person I'm talking about, of course, is Enda, winning 3 of the Imperial Tournaments, and the last one at the end of the closed beta. I think the game is a little bit different. Destroyers are in a slightly different place. Daka, do you have any thoughts about how Destroyers may play in this tournament, and maybe specifically how Enda might do?
So let's see. Destroyer hasn't really changed since CVT.
Destroyers themselves haven't really changed, but the increased health pools, I think, makes it so red buff may be a little less attractive of an option sometimes.
Yes, there's also the increased health pools. So
Yes.
It'll be more difficult to one-combo people even with the red buff.
And, when I'm thinking back about it...
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
As long as they don't have all their CC, of course.
Of course, if they still have their CC, you will be given the dickies, as they say. I remember some very, very important matches, Enda against Panda Stick, where he used his axe crit in the closed beta, and it took out like a good 50% of his health. So that will be largely mitigated in some ways. I still think Destroyers are very strong. I still think they have a very appropriate place in the game. But Enda, of course, no matter what you think about him, no matter what the community thinks about him, he is very consistent in his results, and he is always a force to be reckoned with, a very dangerous person to watch. Now, Daka, once upon a time, I cheered for you to win the Imperial North American tournaments, because I thought to myself, Daka is such a good player, but he hasn't gotten any tournament wins, but you have got that tournament win. So since then, I have moved on. I'm sorry, friend. I have moved on. And now there are new players that I'm cheering for. There are new players that I'm cheering for. There's 2 players that I want to see do well. One is Panda Stick, the Summoner.
Oh, yes.
He is the Silver Surfer. He has managed to, in every single tournament he participates in, go to the finals, and then he has managed to take that opportunity and throw it on the ground and step on it. He has somehow managed to fail in the most spectacular ways and get second place. Oh my God, Panastick. Oh,
How
just
many
thinking about it makes
times
me
did that
makes me
happen?
upset. I think 3 times now.
Hmm.
3 times it's happened. 3 times, 3 times to the finals, 3 times he lost. And I think two of his losses, in fact, are to Enda, and one of them is to you. I believe
Yes.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
So Panda Stick, as you know, little birdie came to my shoulder and told me that Panda Stick has been practicing against you yourself, and now you can't even beat him. Confirm, deny.
I think I have a trouble against summoners this patch. So
It's
I,
interesting.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I don't think I'll be able to win against Panda if I ever do a go against him.
Oh, you've heard it here first, guys. And I think
Uh,
it's interesting because with this patch's increased health pools, um, the sustain of the summers becomes much more valuable. The fact that they cannot be burst down, like I mentioned, with like axe crits taking 50% of their health, the fact that it's a little more difficult to do that means they can play more neutral game, which means they can heal more, they can do more sustained damage on you with their Sunflower, for example. And so I think it makes it very strong. I don't know if you agree with that thought, but I feel like that's kind of how it's playing out right now.
they have a lot of sustain.
Mm, mm. Also interesting to note that popular WoW PvPer is actually participating in this tournament, and this is one of the things that I'm very excited about is new players coming in after the release of the game.
Yes.
Watch out for the player Vanguards. He's been learning very, very fast. I don't know if you've played against him, Daka,
I've played
but
against him, yep. And he is
he's
very
learning
good
very
as
fast.
well.
Yes, yes, he's been learning the game very fast, so he could be a strong contender. Summoners in general are doing very well, so look out for Vanguards. And then the second player, Daka, that I'm rooting for, the second player is Madoshi.
Ah, yes.
Madoshi, he, Force Master. I just want to see Force Masters do well, but Madoshi in particular has always been denied. I think mostly by Enda. And I feel like whenever I talk to Enda, I'm like, dude, you always beat Madoshi in tournament, but every time I ask about it, you tell me he beats you in spars. I don't know if you've played against Madoshi personally, but how do you think his form is right now?
I didn't really play against him all the all too much, but I'd say he's a very good Force Master.
Mm, mm. I think is he Diamond on
Yes,
NA?
he is.
He's Diamond on NA. Yes, there you go. The coveted Diamond rank, Madoshi.
I should also
Madoshi.
mention Panda, Mado is all in my guild.
Ace.
Ace.
Okay. So definitely a player to watch out for, Madoshi. I hope he can get it together and perform well in tournament. Maybe something about tournament nerves, maybe just the matchups that he gets that he doesn't like. Something about the format just doesn't seem to agree with him. I want to see him do well. So we've talked about Panastic, we've talked about Mado, we've talked about Enda. The last player I really kind of want to mention is you yourself, Daka.
Oh, me?
Now, you've mentioned that you have trouble with summoners, and I think it's a good opportunity to have you here in the hotspot right now. On a scale of 1 to 10 to I beat everybody, how confident are you in winning this North American Imperial Tournament?
Let's say a 5 or 4.
A 5? Oh my god, Daka, don't do this, man. See, even though I'm not rooting for you, you're still a good friend of mine and still want to see you do well. I think we can talk a little bit more about why these reasons that I have, and there will be opportunities to talk more about these top-end PvPers, and hopefully we'll see some new names. Do you have any thoughts about the brackets? Any closing ideas, Daka, about the Imperial Tournament?
I see lots
Any
of
other players that you're looking for, actually, too, also?
I see lots of new faces, and that's always great to see. And I hope like the next tournament, we'll see like even bigger brackets.
Yes, so currently we have 58 of 32 players registered, so we don't quite have enough for the 64 player bracket, but if Imperial Tournament gets bigger, then we have more participants, and then we can expand the tournament bracket to 64. The Imperial EU Tournament actually does expand their brackets to 64, so hopefully we can get to that point on North America. I think you bring up a good point.
We need to promote this tournament a lot more in NA.
Yes. Tell all your friends, anybody who believes that they have a chance to become the next Dakaringer, or to become the next Panda Stick or Marushi, or even pave their own way and make a new name for themselves, whatever it is, please let them know and participate, because I would love to cast games with new faces in it.
I would also like to shout out to Silas, who is also in our guild and also participating in this tournament.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, aces everywhere. I thought aces were supposed to be rare, Daka. What the hell?
And you're an ace as well.
Oh god, I've been exposed. No, you weren't supposed to tell them that.
No.
I was infiltrating the guild. I was just there to gather information, but now I've been outed. Oh no. Yes,
We also
I am
have
also an
Avarice in
ace.
the guild.
Oh no, it's rigged. This is rigged. No, it's not actually rigged. That being said, the Imperial Tournament is now going to be starting their ranking system. So all these tournaments that we're going to be playing after the release of the game, the records will be recorded. The winning records, the win-loss records, they will all be noted, and you can see on impbns.com, impbns.com, you can see actually the standings, and you can look at some EU players already are ranked just a little bit based on how many points they got for winning, losing. You can see Ringshu, oh my god, Ringshu the Destroyer, he upset Bev, so he gets 150 points and Bev gets a measly 100. Oh, what an upset. If you guys didn't see the Imperial EU tournaments, oh my god, you definitely should take a look at that. The semifinals were amazing and the finals were amazing, but more importantly, you can note that we now have a ranking, so as tournaments become more prominent and we play more games, we can actually have a seeding and a ranking system. So we won't have these situations where, for example, on the bracket that I forgot to mention, oh, actually it's changed, but before on the bracket we had the unfortunate situation where Endo was against Pomf in the first round, which is not what you want to see in a tournament most of the time. Before we were doing random seeds and it was kind of a casual thing, but now we have actual rankings for the players, and especially with more tournaments, it'll become more accurate. We can actually have seeding and have the tournament be a little more interesting for the later rounds. So, Daka, final thoughts, closing thoughts, shout-outs that you want to give. You've already done a lot, but I encourage you to do more if you want. We're about to close out the podcast.
So,
Please.
I wish all participants the best of luck, and for all of you guys who are not participating, check it out, and if you're up for it, apply, register for it our next week.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much, Daka. Oh my god, you're such a good competitor. Oh, and I was just reminded, as a shout out, there is a special individual that I have to promote. She does chibi artwork for tournament winners, and she does a lot of commissions and stuff. You should definitely look at her art. Her ID on Twitch, she's actually been lurking in the channel. Her ID on Twitch is Liquor. Talk to her, spam her with PMs, send her requests to do art, because she does some very cute things. She works on a lot of Blade and Soul art as of late, so tournament winners can have the choice to have their character drawn in chibi mode. So you can use that for anything you would like, for stream icons, or just having it to keep for yourself or to show it off. So definitely check out Liquor and her art. It's fantastic. It's so cute. It's awesome.
She's also an ace.
She's also an ace. Oh god. Oh god. Ugh. There's too many people in Ace, but that's not a bad thing. Ace is a fantastic guild. You should check them out. So bnstree.com, check that out. You can find me on my Twitch channel listed on stream right now, Rainiest Day. You can find Dakaringer at Dakaringer. You can be on my Twitter at Rainiest Day, same thing as my Twitch channel. With that, episode 2 of the podcast is over. I'm very glad that you guys tuned in. I'm happy to see that there are some amounts of viewers retained from the last episode. I really want this to grow and to become more entertaining for the viewers. So for the next episodes, you can expect to start seeing some guests, and I'm hoping that every week from now on, we can at least have somebody new, somebody special on the show to talk about certain things that they're good at, either a PvPer like Rat Eyes, or maybe somebody else who promotes the community, or maybe even, hopefully, I hope, Daka, I hope this can happen, that we can get even some Korean pro gamers on the show. So look forward to that. Everybody, episode 2 of the podcast is done. Let's talk BNS, 1 p.m. PST, 10 p.m. CET on Sunday. Daka, thank you so much for joining me again. Episode 3 coming next week. Look forward to it. Pohorang and other stuff. Watch the Imperial Tournament at 5 p.m. PST at this channel, BnS. See you guys.
Yep.
That's it for me.
See you later, guys. Have fun in BnS.